quiz that we had.
And what did you have?
It was the management and organizational behavior. I
Mm-hmm.
got 83, so it wasn't bad.
Okay. So are all 9 of you in all your courses together all week, or does it vary?
Yeah, I think just one of them is not in. Crystal is not in one of the other classes, but everything.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting dynamic that the same 9 people approximately are in all the same courses together. That's
Yeah, and then we have to do teamwork group like in teams.
Okay.
And then it's like you're with this one and this one, and then it's just so confusing because it's the like it's I know it's the same people, but you have like you work with different people, so it's confusing. I don't know.
Oh, I believe I can relate to that. It's hard to keep track of, and 6 courses is an awful lot. So is 24 hours a week. Maybe
Yeah.
one. I mean, I know it changed the fundamental structure, but a long time ago at SAIT, students were going 24 to 26 hours a week, and that's just. Plus, you have work outside of class time, and maybe with what's happening is maybe some schools will look at, we don't need to spend as much time in the classroom. We can pre-record things. We can still give the students value and reduce the number of hours in a classroom by, say, go from 4 to 3, and then all of a sudden you go to 18 to compare to 24. That's a huge difference to your schedule and your days and stuff like this. So it's just, but I know 2 of the schools I teach at, they've told me that when we go back to the classroom someday, that I only have to do, where I've suggested to them, or we've agreed to, that I'll do 1 class in the room and 1 class online. And, just this past, so just this past week, I was asked to teach an extra course in the winter in project management, and so all the videos are recorded, like all those, I don't know if you've listened to any of the recordings in YouTube, but they're all done. And
yeah, I've seen a couple of them.
Yeah, so I know it's not as good as being able to ask questions, but let's face it. I mean, your group has been really good, but like I get some groups, nobody says anything. It's like pulling teeth. My University of Calgary students are really smart, but boy, they just sit there and listen. They don't participate. It's really hard to get them to say anything. So
I thought our group was terrible at that because it's usually Amy and me talking all the time.
well, there are some people who don't say a lot. Now, some of it I've been, as the students have shared, it's their technology. They don't have the ability to really share, and some of them just aren't. But hey, at least, Jennifer speaks up now and then, and even Regine. It doesn't have to be a lot, but, if everybody spoke up once or twice, a class, that would be awesome. So we were just talking about you, Amy. We were talking about the fact that you and Viviana and Jennifer participate a fair amount, and that's great.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was talking about my University of Calgary students who are really good. They're really good students, except they don't participate. Even when we're in the regular classroom, they just sit there because they're not used to that with their courses. It's all pure lecture. So, all right. Now, chapter number 5 is perhaps, I think it's a fairly interesting chapter. So you should be seeing on your screen, physical agents. And so this is something, let me back up. Okay. I don't know, but I think this is like a little more concrete than maybe some of the other stuff that we dealt with, and things that you people can relate to. So obviously something that is tangible. You can touch it in a lot of cases. And there can be very hazardous chemicals in particular. And there's a great deal of effort and control for acquiring, using, and disposing of physical agents. Even in your own home. If you have a can of paint, it used to be you just threw it out in the garbage. But now you're supposed to take it to like places like Home Depot and stuff like that. They'll accept it so they can dispose of that properly so that paint doesn't go into the water supply, etc. Energy that may cause injuries or diseases. So there can be like electricity and things along this line. You may not have thought about it, but things like noise. If you know, if I know I mentioned in class the other day about a tour that I go on where students wear hearing protection because the machine is actually louder than standing behind a jet engine, which I'm sure you can appreciate is a very loud noise to begin with. So you have large crowd noises, things along this line. If you work, there's members of rock bands. What does typically a member of a rock and roll band, if they've been in the industry for years, what do they typically suffer that's related to this?
Deafness.
Right, absolutely. They definitely do. They have hearing loss. All right. X-rays. Have any of you gone for an X-ray for, like, say, dental or something like that in particular? What's the process they use?
They make you wear like the lead protective vests and they step out of the room.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. There's a process or protocol for it. And of course you and I probably, depending how many x-rays and stuff we get, but probably the lead vest is just for like psychological safety. I don't think that anybody is going to get damaged if they have 20 or 30 x-rays in their life. But of course the people working there are exposed to it daily on a constant basis. So they have to be very careful about that. And one of the ways to control this is to obviously monitor, shield, job rotation, protective equipment. And, I used to work in the healthcare field. I can only imagine what's going on now. As far as there would have been certain parts of the hospital where like there would have been extra protection and things like an autoclave, which sterilizes equipment so you can use it again and to prevent infection, etc. But these days, I would imagine anybody in the hospital, even before it became mandatory, one of the first areas, everybody had to wear a mask. And even then, what is it? Something like there's a very high percentage of people who have COVID are actually, or at least recently, who actually are healthcare workers or frontline workers. Right. So in this case, you have to be concerned about ultraviolet radiation, infrared radiation, microwave radiation, etc. So I just needed to move something. Radio waves. Has anybody ever lived beside a power grid? Like, the transmission lines? You are aware that those things leak, like they leak as far as energy. There's a dispersion of the energy in the lines that carry electricity. And they've done studies on that about people who live near them have higher rates of illness because of long-term exposure. So if you're ever going to buy a house or something like that, and you see that there's a large, like, you know, one of the big transmission lines, you may want to double check. Just like here in Calgary, there's an area of Calgary that is built on the former Calgary garbage dump. And they did a study on it, and those people in that neighborhood have higher incidences of illness. It's not an area I would live on just because of that alone, long-term exposure to whatever, toxic chemicals, etc. All right. And again, you know, protective equipment, training how to deal with it properly. So this is just absorption rates, and for I don't think it's necessary to go through each one individually. Right. But it's also, I know I asked this before, are you people suffering from a lot of eye strain? You find your eyes sore?
Earlier on, I was getting a lot of headaches, but I think I'm slowly adapting to being on the screen for, well, not all day, but
Long periods of time.
yeah.
And it's interesting, like until a couple of weeks ago, I'd never heard of blue light glasses. And, you know, I've been bringing this up, and I ordered some, but they made a mistake in it. So I'm going to have to wait a little longer. But yeah, at the beginning of the term, about 2 and 3 weeks ago, my eyes were really hurting. And I never heard of blue light glasses. So it's part of the reason I'm mentioning it. If you have office workers who are in front of their monitors all the time, whether they be at home or in the office, I know a friend of mine, his girlfriend is constantly in front of the monitor. Like even if you say, well, I was in the monitor before, but no, you tend to get up and do things. You tend to get up, walk over to somebody's desk or office, or there would be breaks that you maybe not even realize. It's supposed to literally sitting there. Like there's nobody interrupting you. You don't, you know, you can sit there for long hours at a time. So, but like you, Jennifer, my eyes are not as sore as they were, but I still ordered the blue light glasses to help with the glare from the screen. You can dim it, but then it's not as easy to read, right? Again, I've taken my students actually on tours of a company called Honeywell. And out here in Alberta, they wear these things. They look somewhat similar to this device you see in the pocket, and they measure for toxic gases. And because if by the time you realize it's toxic, you're dead. So all these people who work on like oil rigs and stuff like that, they wear these devices in their pocket like that, and it will go off and tell them that there are dangerous gases. Has anybody ever had to wear anything like this? I would imagine I've never worked in like a nuclear plant or something like that, but I would bet that people would have to wear that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was like, I haven't used any of that yet.
Yeah, thank you. In any of the jobs I've ever had, like I've, you know, mainly worked in fairly office type jobs, you don't need this. But no, it's necessary. And of course, we already know the employer's going to be paying for that, not the employee. Noise. Who here has had a situation where you've worked or been in a situation where there's like really loud noise on a fairly constant basis? Anybody ever worked in a bar or anything like that? You know, where there's bands? All right. So, you know, I mean, I can see a waiter or waitress who works in where there's like loud music or a nightclub. I'm sure at some point that perhaps one or two of you may have spent an evening in a situation, or you went to a concert, and have you noticed that even after like 2 or 3 hours of that concert, you walk out and it's just like, it's almost, does it feel like you're a little bit deaf? Is that
Yeah.
okay? It does, right? And imagine getting that all the time. So we talked about members of the band, but I would also think that the people who are the roadies who are setting up the band, if they stay around and watch, because they have to take it, they have to take the set down and then move it somewhere else. That those high, decibels, the loud noise can cause hearing damage. And of course, you talk about how frequent. We go to a concert, we don't wear hearing protection because we're probably not going to concerts all the time. Then, of course, how long it is, like how many minutes or hours or days. And then, of course, the amplitude, how loud it is. So those are fairly, those people who are in the bands, like I know there's a band member from AC/DC. He was told, you keep doing this, you're going to go totally deaf. And because of, hours and doing it frequently. And when they go on tours, I mean, you would think that some of the major artists, like especially if they're a little older, like Elton John or somebody like that, you would think that they would probably have hearing loss. All right. All right. So again, mainly talking about the physical effects, and there's also psychological effects, loud noises. I would imagine most of you, if you had a loud noise, you would flinch. You would, if there was a loud crash or bang or whatever the case may be. All right. So physiological damage. Wow, I didn't expect that they would be talking about, I'd have to get a degree in medicine to teach this course. All right. So nerve deafness and transmission. So there's just prevention of transmission. We'll go over the midterm exam in about 2 weeks or so, but I don't think that we're going to have this type of level of detail in it. Inner ear, middle ear, outer ear. I think that most of you are well aware of how to proper ear care, and it's permanent. Or do any of you know? I know I have a cousin, and she's slightly younger than me, and she has been wearing hearing aids for a while, and her father wears hearing aids. Do any of you know some of it's genetic? She's never worked in a situation where she's had like loud noises on a constant basis. But yeah, she in her 50s she started wearing hearing aids. And anybody have a family member or know somebody who wears hearing aids? It's not necessarily related to work.
My ex-boyfriend's mom actually had hereditary hearing loss that she needed hearing aids for.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
So it could then be passed all along to your ex-boyfriend too, and any children that he may have. So yeah,
He
some of
didn't
it's
listen
hereditary.
anyway, so.
Sorry?
So he didn't listen anyway, so that's why he's an ex.
I'm so glad that you shared that with us. That has put a smile on my face, and obviously a chuckle too. It's like I'm surprised, since it's like, come on, ladies, is that not a gender thing that men just don't listen? Isn't that, or should I even go down that path? All right. Okay. So we'll keep our thoughts to ourselves because your instructor happens to be male. Okay. So, and that's fine. All right. So, ringing in the ears. These are you know, raising, having a, I'm sure you've been around somebody who's like, turn it up, and it's like, oh, that's loud for me, but it's like they like it at that level. So some of it could be their hearing loss. Hearing. Well, I know that when I worked at the mine before we started, every summer before we started, they would do tests on our hearing, and so they would test to see whether our hearing was, below average or above average. They tested every year when we started because we were around large pieces of equipment that were loud. And of course, as you tend to get older, then, I'm sure you've had to talk louder to grandma or grandpa or things along this line. Or it's like old people, they just don't hear so well. It's just a fact, right? Right. So you can have gradual losses and you can have permanent. So the permanent ones obviously are exactly what it says. It's there, you can't reverse it. And in temporary, just getting the person away. I'll have to read it. I was just reading it because I am a fan of AC/DC, and they may be coming out with a new album. And I've actually been fortunate enough to see them in concert. And it was very loud. And it was an outdoor concert. But anyways, I'd be interested to see that if that person's hearing could come back by removing themselves. So that would be the temporary. So 2 types of hearing loss. As simple as it's temporary, it's permanent. Like that's pretty straightforward, right? Your hearing loss is either permanent or temporary. So in this particular case, there's standards for noise control and audio meters. Have any of you ever gone to especially a sporting event where they have the fanometer and they're trying to make loud noises, where they're like getting people to cheer? I'm sure you've seen it on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they actually do that to measure. And what is it, about 120 decibels? Something like that starts to get pretty high. Now, cars, when I worked in the automotive industry, you may not realize this, but in between your carpet on your car and the frame of the car, it's usually almost like it comes in various forms. It can be rubber, but there is sound deadening. There is sound deadening for reducing road noise and things along that line. Weather strips in the door. And also what they do is, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. And when I worked at Toyota, bear with me for a second. I'm having a flashback here to what they do in some vehicles is this. If you just have a piece of metal and you hit it, it's actually fairly loud, like with a rock or a hammer or whatever the case may be. So what they do is, if I remember correctly, they take a piece of metal, paint it, and another piece of metal. So a piece of metal, it's usually something like paint, and then another piece of metal joined together as like a sandwich. And then when you hit it, I remember demonstrations. I'm picturing a demonstration from a very long time ago. And they hit a piece of metal that was just a piece of metal. It was loud. They hit the second one, and it was much more muffled. It was much lower. So what they're trying to do with that is reduce the cabin noise. Have any of you ever been in like a really nice car, like a really high-end car, like Lexus, Mercedes, something along that line? Have any of you ever gone in? One of the things you might notice if you do, they're really quiet. They're very quiet compared to cars that are more, say, on the or less expensive cars. So if you ever get a chance and you're ever in a car that's like a high-end luxury car, they are super quiet. And but but they still have the same road noise that everybody else does, but they muffle or deaden the sound. It's like putting extra, even between where you sit in the car and the engine. The engine's loud, can be loud. They put these sound deadening. They look like asphalt sheets that they put in there to deaden the sound. And so you can do the same thing. You can add sound absorbing materials. That's the point that I'm trying to get at with talking about the cars. You can do that with your machines. Vibrating pads. So when something vibrates, it can get very loud. I'm sure you've all had a situation where something was vibrating and it was very loud. But if you put a pad underneath it, it just quiets it down. Like it. Just to use an example from home, if you've got a toothbrush and it's vibrating and rattling on the counter, if you put a towel under it, all of a sudden it's making almost no noise. So again, redesigning the operation, etc., putting it in a separate room, put a barrier around it, or simply go and buy a new machine. Have any of you ever gone to buy like a new machine, or because like the washer or the dryer was really loud? Like it was just, you can. I know that in the house that I had built, one of the houses I had built, we had a laundry room that was right beside the master bedroom, and we put in extra soundproofing. They just used regular insulation is a good sound barrier. So we didn't want that when we were trying to say sleep and somebody was doing a load of laundry at night, that it would be very loud. We also put in between floors, because we were having it built, and the basement was being developed, a sound deadener, which was simply more insulation between the main floor, and it was a bungalow, between the main floor and the basement, to reduce noise going up or down, just to make it a little bit quieter. It just, so you can, put in sound absorbing materials. All right. So you can move the worker away from the source or move the source away from the worker. All right. So there's a formula for as you double the sound source, the noise level will drop by a fixed amount. The distance doubles, I should say. And, yes. So just reducing, it just makes sense, right? None of this is, so far, as much as this course has been a surprise, this is not a surprise to you people. You know this. I'm sure at some point you've moved something away, further away from you, or maybe you've moved it closer, especially when it comes to noise. Right. Personal protective equipment, the prevention is the least costly and the most commonly used, but it's not always the best. You can also, sometimes the personal protective equipment can be very expensive. So another way to deal it is, okay, Viviana, you go for 2 hours. Then we're going to move you to an area that's quiet, and then Jennifer takes over for the next 2 hours, and then Amy takes over for the next 2, and then David takes over for the last 2 hours of our shift. So you can simply rotate people. So remember, what we're doing is reducing duration is what we're doing in that case. Again, relocating, which may or may not be possible. Again, isolation, automation, rest periods, redesigning the site, putting barriers in. I mean, it's not done for noise control, but one of the things that people are experiencing, and you've probably experienced this, with a mask on, do you find yourself talking louder to people? Has anybody had that?
Yeah.
You've had to consciously. One of the things I'd hoped I'd never get to, but I guess some places I do, because when I'm in a classroom, I have to project my voice. I have to talk louder than I normally would. So I've had people tell me you've gotten loud, because I'm so used to going in the classroom and not just talking to somebody across the table, but I'm having to literally talk louder at a higher, you know, simply louder, so people in the back of the room can hear me. So, and then that becomes a habit. I've noticed in my field that instructors who've been teaching for a long time, they're just naturally loud. Like, am I talking loudly to you people? I feel like I might be.
No.
Okay. All right. Just as long as I don't sing, we're okay. Okay. Oh, we've got these very fine yellow headsets, right? So in this particular case, this person has hearing protection on. That drill may be making loud noises, or there may be loud noises around them, around this person. So noise is a big issue. Vibrations, right? I think we all know what vibrations are. Yeah, it's like, many examples of that. Heck, you put your phone on vibrate, right? Okay. So, but have any of you ever experienced, has any of you, I know I have, they call it a TENS machine. Has anybody ever heard of that? It's related to vibrations. Anybody know what a TENS machine does? I actually bought one recently. What it does is, and you've seen it on TV. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Dr. Ho? Dr. H.O., Dr. Ho? You seen what he does?
Yeah.
So to a degree, it's sort of vibrating, but it causes the muscle to contract and relax. And so a TENS machine does that. People who do physical therapy, many years ago, I hurt my back, and all I would do is, back then they didn't have them for personal use. I went to the physiotherapist. They put these sort of electrode things on the spot that hurt, and 20 minutes later they would come back. Oh, my back felt better. So with all the sitting I'm doing, I'm finding my back pretty stiff. And they're not necessarily all that expensive anymore. You can get them. So what it does is it causes your muscles to contract and relax. And it's like, so it loosens them up. But if you have vibrating of your whole body, I would imagine at some point, have any of you ever, well, I'm sure you have any of you ever gone in a car that the road is really rough? It's washboardy. I'm sure you've all been in a car when you've gone down a dirt road and it's very bumpy, right?
Yeah.
And what does that make you feel like? Like physically feel?
Uncomfortable.
Yes.
I can feel it in my
Yes.
ears and my teeth.
Yeah, exactly. And your stomach, perhaps, your head, your it feels like, well, because your brain has been rattling around in your in your cranium, right? Like it's been literally jarred. I'm sure at some point you've all had to sit down because you've had that jarring. Just over a year ago, I went with somebody and we decided to take this back road. We thought it'd be scenic. Oh, it was the worst road I've ever been on. And it was so washboardy. It was just unbelievable. And there were sometimes we were going 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers an hour. And if we went a little faster, the vehicle went side to side. It was hard to describe how bad the road was. I mean, it wasn't potholes and stuff. It was just causing extreme vibration. I thought for sure that something's going to fall off my vehicle, right? But the person beside me was freaked out. They were absolutely freaked out about this vibrating. And you can see, things like impaired vision, especially if it's like long term and extreme. Yeah, it affects your brain. So you can have sore neck, joints, things like that, degenerative conditions, necrosis. So yes, it affects people. If you would not want to be in a situation where you are having these vibrations, but you go to work, you may be standing on a platform that has these vibrations, or again, noise. We all know that noise is vibrations, is waves, right? Okay. Thermal. Let's talk about something besides noise. Hot and cold temperature extremes, humidity. Right. So, have some of you worked where there's extreme hot or extreme cold? Or been in situations like that that affects your person? Has anybody ever worked in a situation where like you're working beside a furnace? I know two examples that come to mind. I've mentioned one before. It's the place that makes metal springs. They have to heat up their furnaces to hundreds of degrees Celsius. I can't remember the exact number, but it's in the hundreds of degrees. And my father was an assayer, gold assayer for the mine. And he would have to stand in front of a very hot, it'd be like an oven, and he'd get a pair of tongs, and he had these asbestos at one point, mitts. And he would stand in front of there and he would take the samples in and out of this very high furnace. Okay. And I remember in particular, what happens to your body when you sweat a lot? What are some of the things that happen physically to your body if you sweat a lot? You've done this if you've been laying on the beach or a hot sunny day in your backyard. What do people need to do?
Need to do?
Yeah, what should you do? What does a lot of heat do to your body? And you should do to recover. Sorry, go ahead.
You should cool off. Drink some
You
water.
need to hydrate yourself.
You need to hydrate yourself. Yes. You need to cool off because you can get heat stroke. Yes. And my father used to actually because also, and replenish some salt in, because when you sweat, you need to replace the water, but you also need to replace the chemicals, all right? And some of that is salt. So, yes, and of course, when it's very cold, right, sort of the opposite, you also have, because cold can cause damage to people. I'm sure you've had situations in your life where, you've touched a piece of metal in the winter and things along this line. And so some people work where there's very hot and there's very cold temperatures. All right. So you have conduction when two surfaces are in contact, convection where it radiates. So one, say in this case, heats the other like an oven with airflow and heat. And of course, I think most of you know what a convection oven is. Convection ovens heat and cook faster than regular conventional ovens. And so it does it through airflow, or all these things that you see advertised now for air fryers and stuff. It's supposed to be a healthier way of cooking. And so it heats the air. And even if your house is the place I'm living at, and yours may be the same, it's got airflow. My previous place that I had no air ducts because it was water. It was like pipes and stuff like that, so it was heat that way, right? And then, of course, electromagnetic waves for radiation, right? So here's the thermal process for a human being: food, water, and air. So we can sit, stand, walk, and jump. Right. And then, of course, that causes, I mean, if you start running a lot, you can, build up a sweat and you get quite hot. So here's some illnesses, cramping. By the way, if you ever happen to go to a place like, say, Las Vegas during the summer where it's like 47 above, and perhaps you might sample some adult beverages. What's a bad idea about doing that? What are things like even like soft drinks do, or coffee even for that matter, and alcohol? What does it do? And I'm talking about hydration. Alcohol, caffeine.
Dehydrates.
Oh, that was a little loud. Caught me off guard there.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. We're just talking about auto. I was not expecting that. No, it's totally fine. I was like, yeah. So drinking water and rehydrating. So, you go down there, you decided to perhaps have a really good time, start consuming a lot of alcohol, and it's really hot. People can wind up with some and have because they went overboard. So making sure that, you're drinking water, and then cramping up is, I'm sure that, I'll put it this way, I'm sure that all of us in this room have had heat rashes and heat cramps, right? And then you get heat stroke, which is the worst. Right. Cold. Oh, I really don't want to see that picture. All right. Okay. Do we really want to see this picture?
No.
Okay. No. Has anybody ever had frostnip or frostbite?
Yeah.
Do you care to explain what that's like? I don't think I ever have. I'm pretty sure I have not. What?
I still have the effects from it, like on the very tips of certain parts of my toes.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels like it's numb still.
Okay.
Can be painful at first though.
So what Amy's really trying to say is that the tips of her toes feel like man from the neck up. It feels numb. That was a joke, people. Okay, thank you. See, Amy is either laughing at me or with me, and either one is fine. What do you think about that, Regine? Are we just, is that a gender thing? But yeah, and I've been told, and thank you, that once a person gets frostbite, that they're certainly much more susceptible to getting again. And you said that you have, numbness. It's from that. Sorry to hear that. So again, here's some temperatures. So you have to be, and I'm sure you've had situations, even in Winterpeg, about different temperatures, right? So in this particular case, warnings about heat and heat warnings and things along that line. Stay inside or stay cool, stay hydrated. They constantly reminded people about that. And of course, then it affects your core body temperature. Hopefully you never get to the point of passing out or things along this line. And we know that as human beings, we can't let our core body temperature get too hot, or we can't let our internal body temperature get too cold. So you have to be careful. I mean, we would know that in our climate. We would know that in our climate because we have extremes. I've met people, they have no idea what the cold is like. I actually, a few years ago, dated a woman who was from South America. I met her when I was on a trip in the Caribbean, and she came to visit me in January. She had never seen snow except on TV. She'd seen it, but it was only on TV. So we went to buy her a winter jacket and she was being really fussy. Oh, I don't like this one. I don't like that one. I said, fine. She says, no, it's okay. We went to go to the car and the doors of the mall opened and there was this cold blast of air. The look on her face was, okay. She said, I want a jacket, and she didn't care what color as long as it fit. That's the only thing. So you have to keep yourself within a certain range. You can't be too hot. You can't be too cold. Even some of you when you sleep, same kind of thing. So, well, and that's the end of this chapter. So,
Woohoo.
sorry?
I was like, woohoo.
It doesn't mean you have to stop talking to me. We got another 17 minutes of class. I could just talk about anything, because no. You can watch the video. That's 17 minutes and 31 seconds. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to ask you to go and watch the video. All right? And yes, I expect that none of you will go and watch it, okay? So we'll see you on Friday. Are there any questions for me? Anything I can do? We're going to move on to chapter 6 on Friday, and we're going to also do some exercises. I now have the instructor resources as of a couple days ago. So I only had it for like a couple days. So we're going to also start to do some exercises, maybe even some role playing and things along this line, rather than just going through the PowerPoint slides, more discussion types of questions. And remember last week on Friday, I said, this week we'll do chapter 5 and we'll do chapter 6. Next week we'll do chapter 7. And then we'll start and we'll go through some materials. So, our goal is to be done chapter 7 by the end of next week. And then it gives us another week to just go back and do reviews and not just a review and me going through the slides again, but what I'll do is I'll give you strong hints of what to study. And we can even start that on Friday of next week. So you've got some time to go through some of the chapters. I can see the midterm exam. And I told you what I'll do is, let's say there's 7 questions, I'll go over 10 points. I'm not going to tell you exactly what's on the test, but I can't say study these 7 things and test you on these 7 things, but I can say study these 10 things and 7 of them are on the test. So rather you say, oh, I've got 210 PowerPoint slides to study. That's kind of a little too much. All right?
Yep.
It's Wednesday, huh? It's the end of the day. It's been a long day for you people. So I hear you had a quiz. Viviana was telling me that she had a quiz and the rest of you had a quiz. How did that go?
I got 70 on it.
Okay. At least you know your mark right away. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting how students' expectations have changed. When I went to university, a C, which is about 65, 67, was the norm. And now it's like people expect higher marks. So good for you. You did well. You've got 6 courses to take, people. Most university students these days are doing 3, maybe 4. And they're going 3 hours a week. So they're spending about half the time you people do in class. I was talking to Viviana about this at the start. 24 hours a week is plus all the other stuff. That's an incredibly heavy workload. So, in my opinion. We do the same thing at SATE, but the students at SATE don't take 6 courses a term, they take 5. So, at least in our diploma. They don't take 6, they take 5. So, well, if you have questions for me, I'll stay and answer them. Otherwise, we will see you bright and early Friday morning to talk about project management.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Take care, people. Get some rest.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.